So today's lecture is learner's motivation and the needs. So the main areas of discussion are motivation and the needs, learner's characteristics, learning styles, and the learning strategies. So first of all, what kind of learner characteristics do you know or exist? So learner characteristics include a learner's motivation for learning, learning style, learning strategies, maturity, and the past language learning experiences. So these factors influence learners' attitude to language, learning, and how they learn it, how they respond to different teaching styles and approaches. So how successfully they are at learning a language. So motivation and the language learning. So what is this motivation? So motivation is the thoughts and the feelings which makes us want to and continue want to do something and which turn our wishes into action. So motivation influences why people decide to do something, how long they keep wanting to do it, and how they work to achieve it. So types of motivation: integrative and the instrumental motivation. According to Gardner and Lambert, there are two types of motivation: integrative motivation and the instrumental motivation. So the integrative motivation means learning the language with the intention of participating in the culture of its people. And instrumental motivation suggests and implies that learner learns the language in support of a purpose relating to occupation or further useful motive. These two types of motivation can be affect and control the procedure and the outcome of learning. So I would like to highlight some types of motivation. So the next types of motivation are intrinsic and the extrinsic motivation. So students who have intrinsic motivation are inclined to stay with intricate and complicated problems and gain knowledge from their slips and the mistakes, according to Workers, Green, and Mansell. So besides, intrinsic motivation is essential and fundamental for the integration process through which elements of one's accessible internal awareness and knowledge is assimilated or mixed with new knowledge. So extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is a propensity to take part in activities because of the reasons which do not link to the activity. So these reasons can be anticipation of reward or punishment, like being successful in the exam or getting good mark, according to Linz and Dessay. So motivation and its concepts, according to Dorney and Sizer. So motivation and its concepts. So first of all, they are teacher, the classroom atmosphere, the task, rapport, relationship attitude, self-confidence, interest and autonomy, as well as independence and personal relevance, goal, target, and the culture. These are very important, concepts, because when a learner has these motivation types, in this case, he or she will be successful. Now I'm going to pass on to learning styles. So learning styles are the ways in which a learner naturally prefers to take in, process, and remember information and skills. So there are some types of learning styles. One of them is visual, or sometimes we say like spatial, yeah? So visual learners prefer pictures, images, as well as, something that they can see. So the learners love to see lessons come to life and often sit at the front of the class to not only get a full view of the teacher's body language and facial expression, but also to avoid potential and visual abstractions, even distractions sometimes. So the second type of the learners are oral. So we sometimes call them like auditory learners. So they rely primarily on music and the sound for their learning. Information is often best required through verbal lectures, discussions, and the mini presentations. And then nowadays, many young learners, especially teens, like listening to different songs in English language, and in this way they acquire the language. So the next type is physical, or sometimes we say kinesthetic type. So your hyperactive students may simply be so, curious, kinesthetic learners who prefer using their body, hands, and sense to touch to explore the world. So these students tend to have trouble setting for long periods of time. But with the right strategy, you may be able to enthrall these energized bunnies. So especially this physical approach, physical learners can be combined with TPR, as I have mentioned in my first lecture. And so that, for example, is applicable with children, for example, yes. And when you are using different, gestures, for example, when they learn different songs in English, for example, head, shoulders, knees and toes. And this is, very important, and I think can be interesting for physical learners. So next one is verbal. So sometimes we say linguistic learners. These are students who learn best through words, regardless of whether they are communicated in speech or writing. So when learning something new, students who belong to the category prefer hearing a detailed explanation over viewing a physical or visual demonstration. For example, when you present or explain some, vocabulary, especially abstract nouns, of course, such learners prefer to write down everything on their papers. So next one is learning style, logical learners, mathematical learners. These students prefer using logic, reasoning, and systems. So you may find them to have a keen sense for numbers, sequence, association, and problem solving. So in such, in a case, you may use in your class different puzzles, for example, or hunting games, hunting treasure games, and so on. And therefore, somehow such learners prefer in order to develop their critical thinking skills. The next type is social, group, or interpersonal, or sometimes we say like cooperative learners, yes? So group learning streamlines the learning experience of social and interpersonal learners. They are quite verbal and they are always anxious to apply what they have learned in interactive settings. They like to talk a lot, they like to communicate a lot, and this is, I think, that really a very good way. For example, if you use a learner-centered approach when you are using in your class different communicative methodology. So the next one is learning styles. Types of learning styles are solitary or individual learners or intrapersonal learners. So as the name suggests, these kind of students are the quiet, angels who can work alone with minimal dictations from their directions from their teachers. So often, mistakes is the shy ones of the classroom. The solitary learners can be quite extroverted when they give opportunity. I think that among your learners, you can find also individual learners who prefer to do their own, with their own pace, doing different, tasks, but not communicating with each other. But still, as a teacher, I think that you have to somehow motivate them, not working alone, but interacting, because you are teaching the English language. So the next one is reflective learning style. Learners, we say. So reflective learning involves students thinking about what they have read, done, or learned, relating the lesson at hand to their own lives and making meaning out of their material. It is more than just memorizing some facts, formulas, or, dates. And this is really very good when a learner reflects, on their learning as well as a teacher. So next type is autonomous learners, who is self-managed and self-monitored, as well as, they monitor also their learning. Sometimes they refer to collectively as, self-regulated learning as well as personalized learning. And the next one is impulsive learners, so who are, learners. They learn best when is able to respond immediately. So we must remember that different learners prefer combining different, learning styles, not only one. And therefore, please, when you teach in your classroom, you have to remember that among your learners, different types are sitting in your classroom, and therefore do not forget to combine all your learning styles. So now I'm going to move on with learning strategies. So learning strategies are the ways that learners choose and use to learn the language. So they include ways to help themselves identify what they need to learn, what they need to process, remember, and use the new language. So learning strategies include, so repeating new words in your head until you remember them, experiencing by using just learned language in conversation, also asking your teacher to give feedback on your language use, as well as deciding to use a foreign language as much as possible, for example, by taking tourists, to go and see some sightseeings, and also recording your speaking, judging and correcting your pronunciation, for example, vekero.com, asking a speaker to repeat what he or she has said, also deciding what vocabulary you need to learn, and then learning, for example, phrasal verbs, coherence, for example, discourse markers, some functional components, and so on. And also deciding to write each new vocabulary item on a separate card and display on the fridge, and also paraphrasing. This strategy, I'm focusing on your learners, but as a teacher, of course, you may also incorporate in your class while teaching different methodology, and as well as to motivate your learners when you teach the English language in your class. Thank you for your attention.